element of it, as I've spoken about before, is finding a spiritual practice that enables you to quiet the whole mental identity that any of us tend to live in. As long as we're locked in this way of understanding ourselves, it's difficult to experience these other qualities that are available to us, that are actually essentially our nature. So one part of the process is a regular practice. In a way, you could say that through your practice, you create a kind of internal steadiness that enables you to remain more steady in the face of pressure, difficulty, challenges, chaotic external stimulation. An analogy would be that when a tree grows, it grows very slowly. If you look at the growth of a tree daily, you may not see anything happening. It's very difficult to notice much. Maybe if you carefully check a single bud day after day, you'll see it's changing. But otherwise, you won't really notice much happening. Maybe over the course of a year, you could notice the tree's growth in relationship to objects around it. But even the growth that you do see is only part of the growth of the tree, which happens underground in a very important way. And a spiritual practice is much like that. A regular spiritual practice can kind of create this internal rootedness, right? A rootedness in something that is not dependent on external circumstances. Right? And in the same way that a deeply rooted tree can withstand storms, high winds, all kinds of pressures and stresses, an individual can also experience that steadiness. You could say stress hardiness even. And that's made possible by, again, the quieting of the mind, the disengaging from this mental identity, this storyline. When we're temporarily disengaged from that we so much dwell in, a whole new experience of ourselves begins to take place. And maybe in just a little bit at a time in the beginning, but it becomes a powerful form of feeling at peace, feeling connection, feeling kind of unreasonable joy that's not about anything happened. That's just innately there. Like the kind of joy you see on the face of a baby, or the peace that you see on the face of a baby. That's not because you were nice to it or anything particular happened around it. It just is that way. So the first aspect of this experience of stillness and peace is some kind of practice that develops that capacity in the same way that you would develop muscles over time through regular work to build those muscles. Another aspect of it is the ability to function in the world, to act in the world in a way that helps you feel connection, in a way that opens your heart and allows you to think of yourself as a part of something greater. As long as we're stuck in a kind of me-centered mentality, right, then we experience ourselves as separate. As separate, we're insecure, we're at risk, we're alone. It's inevitable that we feel that in some way, shape, or form. We live in a fear-based manner. Right? We're afraid of failure. We're afraid of not being accepted or unloved. We're afraid of not being able to be happy. Right? When we're able to serve in the world, we're able to think of ourselves as a part of a greater whole, feel ourselves open our hearts to each other, then we shift out of that sort of definition of a separate self. I'm reminded of a situation or an event where my teacher was asked this question. Actually, he was speaking to a group of medical practitioners at a hospital. And they asked him, they were curious about what he would think of as the root cause of disease in the world. You know, could from a spiritual point of view, you point to some kind of root cause? And he went to a blackboard in the room, and he wrote the word illness on the blackboard. And then he wrote the word wellness. He went back to the word illness and circled the I, and to the word wellness and circled the we. And that was his answer. I love that. It's not just because it's fun, but because it so clearly expresses this idea that as long as we see ourselves as separate and we act in the world, in a way that is founded in that sense of separateness, of being in competition with each other, of being out for ourselves, then we feel disconnected, we feel alone, we're afraid. Whereas, if we can serve in a way where our hearts are open, where we're dedicated to respecting and serving everyone as other manifestations of the same God consciousness, it changes the way that we act in that world. We can play with the world rather than be overwhelmed by it. When you, I'm not an expert at this, but the analogy works well, that when you begin to surf, you need to begin with small waves that will push the board along, but won't overwhelm you. But when you learn to stay still and keep your balance, then actually you start looking for bigger waves, because it's so much fun that you're ready for more. So in the same way, we want to develop this ability to be steady, at peace, to feel an internal calm in the midst of life. We need to develop it over time. Start small. Don't put ourselves in situations that are too overwhelming. Develop our capacity over time through practice. Again, have a comprehensive kind of spiritual path that helps us develop all the levels of our personality and work at all the levels of our being. And then we can begin to see ourselves and the world in a fresh way. My teacher, as you can hear, my teacher loved playing with words. He would say, when you clean up your mind, then you begin to see with new eyes. You begin to see the world with new eyes. And when the mind gets completely clear and clean, you see with your real eyes. And that's when you realize. So, beautifully saying that it's the process of gradually cleaning the mind that allows the mind to finally reflect clearly the truth about who you are, and the truth about your connectedness with everything around you. And when you feel that connectedness, then you no longer see the world as a threatening place. The chaos is a divine chaos. There's a unity in the diversity. You see with a kind of dual vision where, yes, you recognize the diversity, but you celebrate it because it's fun, because it's beautiful, it's rich. Because at the same time, you're not threatened by it. You understand the essential unity underneath it.